recent area of research on the novel techniques of laser plasma interaction, which we have been engaged recently, and we have been studying about it. So I'd like to share some of our work in this particular area. Interaction, which are generally electron dominated, and then I'll mention how we have used a novel domain where the interactions give rise to new results and new mechanisms can be investigated, although the laws remain the same as you have heard in Professor Mahajan's talk. And some of the interesting effects will be discussed. For instance, some new kinds of mechanism of laser energy absorption which can be directly absorbed by the heavier ion species, observation of certain MHD effects, magnetohydrodynamic effects for the short laser pulse system. And then I'll talk about the experimental feasibility, finally the conclusion. Now, what are the conventional, how do we describe the laser plasma interaction in a conventional system? Because the electrons are the lightest species, they play a dominant role in the dynamics, and some of the schemes of laser energy absorption are, for instance, the resonance vacuum, about which I'll mention briefly. And ions generally, which are heavier, do not respond to the electric field of the laser by this dispersion relation. Here, this is the electron contribution, this is the ion contribution, and often because of the heavy mass of the ions, this is ignored, and we have this, the remaining dispersion relation is this, where this is the electron plasma frequency. It's clear from this dispersion relation that only when the frequency of laser light is higher than the plasma frequency, that it can propagate inside the plasma. Omega P depends on the plasma density. So if the plasma density is very high and the laser cannot penetrate it, then we say that the plasma is overdosed. Can we switch off the lights because it's too bright? And what is important here is that it is a dispersion relation for an unmagnetized plasma, and the ion motion have been considered to be negligible here. So this is a picture which explains the schemes of how the laser energy gets absorbed when we use this kind of simplified dispersion relation. If you have a laser which is obliquely incident on this plasma, which has a finite gradient, then at this layer of density, where omega is equal to omega p sec theta, where theta is the angle, and this is the electric field in the plane, you have a cutoff, and after that there is a resonance layer. So there is a tunneling from cutoff to resonance, and here plasma waves are excited, which ultimately break and dump their energy to the plasma system. This is when the gradient in density is not sharp, and it has a finite value and it gradually increases. On the second figure, the next important scheme is where you have a plasma surface which is just the discontinuous plasma surface and it is overdosed. In that case, when the laser light is incident here, it cannot penetrate further, but if the electric field has a component which is normal to the plasma surface, then it can pull electrons out of the surface in the vacuum, and these electrons in fact can oscillate and create certain disturbances in the plasma, and that is how the energy of the laser gets transferred to the plasma medium. But one thing to notice is that in this case, if you you have a normal incidence and the electric field is in this plane of incidence, then this process will not be effective if the laser intensity is non-relativistic. If it becomes relativistic, then the magnetic field of the laser light can contribute and you can have J cross B forces which can be perpendicular to the surface and they can affect the electron motion and the electron can be dragged out of the surface. So this has to be noted that for these mechanisms to work, it is essential that either the incidence is at an angle or the intensity is relativistic. So when you have normal incidence and non-relativistic laser intensity, then this mechanism doesn't work. Now there are many applications where you require ions to get heated. So here these mechanisms all dump energy into electrons which are lighter species, and in cases where you want the ion to be heated, then something else needs to be done, and these ions are very useful for a variety of applications like medical therapy, fast ignition concept, etc., about which I am not going to talk about. And the mechanism of ion getting heated, the conventional mechanism like TNSA, target normal, sheath application or radiation pressure acceleration, they are all mediated by electron species, because in this case the electrons are the first which directly interact with the laser field, and it's only that in the TNSA case, when the electron moves and out of the target, then there is a sheath electric field which lets the ion accelerate, and this is how the ions acquire energy. So what we are trying to see is the possibility where ions can have a dominant dynamical role in laser plasma interaction, and that is where a new regime of physics is there, and that is what I am going to discuss. What is this new regime? We choose, this was all at the moment, the conventional scheme had no external magnetic field, but in this scheme we had a transverse magnetic field basically to arrest the motion of electrons. They get tied up in the external magnetic field, but the frequency of the laser is such that while the electrons get magnetized, the ions are unmagnetized. So you choose a transverse magnetic field, the strength of the transverse magnetic field, in such a fashion that the electrons are magnetized, the electron cyclotron frequency is much greater than the laser frequency, and that is greater than the ion cyclotron frequency. So that gives you a restriction that you need a certain value, certain strength of the applied magnetic field, and that is B0 is given by this. So B0 will be higher if your laser frequency is high, and if you want, usually choosing a high magnetic field is difficult. So if you want, if you choose a lower frequency laser, then this condition can be easier to satisfy by a lower magnetic field. So for CO2 lasers, which have almost 10 times lower frequency, this B0 turns out to be about of the order of 10 kilotesla, which is also still very high. So there are new things to expect. We can just think about it analytically. And what are these things? Let's see if this is the geometry. You have this direction is the incident direction, and even if you have normal incidence, the electric field is transverse to the surface of the plasma, and you will have EY cross external V0 drifts, and that drift will be normal to the surface of the plasma. So you can, in this case, even for a normal incident laser light, expect dynamics of particles which are normal to the plasma surface, which was not possible in earlier cases. So even a p-polarized light, in this case, with non-relativistic intensities, incident normal to the plasma surface will interact with the plasma. Now another interesting thing is about the E cross B drift of the two species. The electric field here is because of the laser, which is time dependent, and the magnetic field is the steady external applied magnetic field. So the E cross B drift of the two species in fact are not equal. It's a textbook problem, very well explained in Nishikawa's plasma physics book and other books, where it shows that the E cross B drift of the two species are in fact given by this expression. E is a function of t. Here you have the cyclotron frequency of the species, and this is the laser frequency. So when you have, for electrons, this will be greater than this for the domain that we are working for, and in the ion case, so this condition, the E cross B drift would be different for electrons and ions. And the second point is that in the case of laser, E is not merely a function of time, it is also a function of space. So it has a variation with space. So, and that variation is along the direction of E cross B. So the disparity between the drifts of ions and electrons generates a current, and there is a finite divergence of that current. So if you have divergence of this current, that would generate charge density fluctuations and electrostatic field component in the plasma, and this is another way in which one expects that the energy can be transferred to the plasma.
Amita, just one clarification.
Yes.
You said that the electrons were magnetized, ions were not magnetized, right, earlier?
Pardon?
You said the magnetic field is such that the electrons are magnetized, ions are not magnetized.
I mean, I choose like that.
But then the E cross B drift, because ions are not magnetized, they will not execute the E cross B drift.
It is not either or kind of thing. I mean, this is the relationship. This is the exact expression that you will get. This is the relationship. When you lie between this range, E is a function of t, this is what the expression of E cross B drift is. It is mentioned, you can see it in the book by Nishikawa, it's derived there. Now my students did the PIC simulations using OSIRIS to test out whether these concepts were true or not. Before that, let me also mention here, there's a very interesting thing here. If B0 is 0, obviously there is no B cross B. If B0 is very high, so that even electrons and ions are also magnetized, then the E cross B drift for both the species will be same, so the current will be 0 in both the limits. The current due to E cross B drift in both the limits would be 0 in that case. So let's remember that. So my students performed PIC simulations using OSIRIS, and these were the set of parameters. More about simulations, there's a poster today in which Devashri will be there, and about simulations you can talk to her. And so what we are choosing here, because we had limited resources, we have taken an arbitrary mass ratio, Mi by Me to the 25, and the relationship between omega C and omega is 2.5, but we have varied it also. The magnetic field strength have been varied. These are the typical set of parameters, but we have varied certain parameters here. And the wavelength is that of the CO2 laser. the laser frequency is, the plasma is overdense. So you have this kind of parameters. The peak intensity is chosen to be non-relativistic, but we have also altered it and studied various cases where that becomes relativistic. So let's do a comparison. When you have no magnetic field, then when the laser pulse is incident, it reflects and there's hardly, because plasma starts from 500, this dotted line, the vertical dotted line, that's where the plasma starts, and the simulations were 2D, but I'm plotting here only as a function of x, because y there is no variation. So the plasma starts at 500, so the laser pulse is incident, strikes the plasma surface and reflects back. That is when there is no magnetic field. And you will see there is hardly any disturbance in the plasma. But when you have an external magnetic field, then as the laser strikes the plasma surface, you can see that there are disturbances which get created in the plasma. So there is a significant disturbance in the plasma that gets created. This is a comparison of density perturbation for the two cases. When one doesn't have any external magnetic field, then the entire plasma surface is pushed slightly inside, and that's why you can see these two lines. The red line is not very visible there, but it can be seen. Red color is not coming out there in the picture very clearly, but this is the comparison of electron and ion density. Ions have been depicted by red color, dashed lines. I don't know if it's not coming here. And you can see both of them have identical density profiles. 500 vertical line is the initial location where the plasma density is finite. At later times, this surface is pushed. In this side plot, this surface is pushed further, but there is no distinction between the ion and electron densities. They move together. On the other hand, when you have external magnetic field, in the regime where electrons are magnetized and ions are not, there is a relative, the density between the electrons and ions differ. There are oscillations which are there present in the system, and these are the blue lines here are the ions, and the color there has shifted in ions, and the smaller amplitude is the electrons, and that there would be a creation of electrostatic field in this particular case. And sure enough, with this plot we have plotted with respect to time, and these are the two cases. Case A, which is the dark line that dark colored line that you see, is hardly any perturbation. It's the case when there was no external magnetic field, but when you added magnetic field, there's a large perturbation that gets created of the electrostatic field. The frequency of the oscillations there also tells something very important. So when there was no external magnetic field, the frequency of these oscillations, which were very small in amplitude here, and very noisy, they correspond to electron plasma frequency. But when we have an external magnetic field, they peak at a frequency which is very close, we observed, to ion-related things, because it's a very low frequency, and perhaps we have not identified it clearly, but most likely it is the lower hybrid frequency that is observed. And then we plot again the two cases for which we have now changed we have magnitudes of the external magnetic field and plotted the density perturbation as well as the x component of velocity of the two species, and you can see when the magnetic field is zero, there is only electron, slight disturbances in electrons, the ions remain almost static. Then the disturbance, as you increase the magnetic field, the deviation between ion and electron, it's not coming clear there, but you can see it is very high. There are two amplitudes that you observe. One of them is for ions and the other is for electrons, and these velocities differ very much. This is at the external field where Dx is equal to 3. But when we increase the magnetic field very high, this is at 10, again the two frequencies, the two electron and ion disturbance seem to start coinciding with each other, and that is what we had expected from the E cross B drift expressions. This is the density fluctuation. This also suggests the same, that when there is a magnetic field is zero, then it is almost noisy, and when it is high, then there are perturbations, but both electron and ions follow each other. So there is no net current that gets generated. If you look at the plot of the energy absorption, that is also very, it tells a lot, that here basically these are the electromagnetic fields, the two electromagnetic fields for the two cases. This is the case where there was no external magnetic field, and this is the case where there is an external magnetic field. And you can see this is the point where this is plotted as a function of time, and this is the point where the laser interacts with the plasma. Then this up to here, this is the duration where the laser pulse interacts with the plasma medium. At this point, it has reflected completely, and after that, it's going out of the box. So the decrease here is when it is going outside the box. Here, in this period, the electromagnetic energy dips of the laser beam seems to dip down, and that decrease is more when we have external magnetic field. And these are the kinetic energy plots of electrons. This is the ion, and this is of the electrons for when you have external magnetic field, and you can see the difference. The kinetic energy of ions sharply increases, the electrons, it's very small, and so on. So this is the table where we show as a function of B, when B is zero, a very small part of it energy gets absorbed in electrons, and smaller still in ions. But as you increase B naught, the ion absorption percentage increases, and when at very high Bz, where both the species get ionized, again the absorption percentage drops. So this is the plot where we show it as a function of magnetic field, the typical current. So wherever the current peaks, you see that is where the laser energy absorption, that also follows the same feature in the graph. And the energy distribution between ions and electrons are shown. When there is no external magnetic field, the electrons have a higher energy in the other case, whereas the ions acquire a very high energy. As expected, the momentum space distribution at various times have been shown. These are the energy circles, and when there is no magnetic field, the electrons acquire a very high, they acquire energy, whereas ions do not. Here on the other hand, both at this particular time, both seem to acquire similar energy, and at a later time, ions acquire larger energy, and in the momentum space, their distribution is fairly random. So it's ion heating that is happening and not a generation of a beam. So clearly a new absorption scheme depending on the E cross, the difference between the E cross B drifts of the two species have been observed and confirmed by the PIC simulations. And then we simulated it for more time, and we observed that there was formation of clear interest despite the fact that initially the ions were unmagnetized, but in the nonlinear phase of the disturbances with increasing laser intensities we observed clear formation of magnetosonic solitons, and they were characterized, and you can see they form this straight line. Since the highest amplitude of the soliton moves farthest, it is the speed is proportional to the amplitude. It forms a straight line here, and these are so what we did, whether they are magnetosonic solitons or not, we carried out this analysis for all the three solitons, where this is we observed that if you have the amplitude, for the soliton amplitude and the width square should be typically constant. So the error in this amplitude here, I mean delta n by n naught is something like, these are the variations between A, B and C cases, and the percentage variation in amplitude is about 61.05% between these three solitons. L also varies, the variation is about 65.39%, whereas AL square is almost constant, and the variation is very reduced, 15.46%. So it suggests that this is the soliton. By changing mass ratio, we carried out and we showed that because this was a non-realistic mass ratio, and the criticism is that the mass ratios are not real, so we scanned it for various masses. So when you increase the mass of the ions, then the number of solitons formed are less, but as you increase the intensity, the number of solitons become more and more. So those can be compensated, and and later on, this was a 2D simulation. So I have initially there is a clear soliton formation, but if you look at the 2D structure later on, they break up, they get modulate. There is a modulation instability that appears, and there is a formation of filaments as the transverse filamentation occurs at a later stage. So I have described two particular observations about the laser energy absorption and the scheme of that, and also the fact that you can observe in a tabletop short laser pulse experiments MHDFX, which are very important, and because normally one has to rely, so the lab astro experiments can become feasible with short pulse laser systems by using these new techniques. Now what about experimental feasibility? You might say that, okay, this requires about tens of kilotesla of magnetic field, even for a CO2 laser, and at the moment we have only 1.2 kilotesla, which has been reported in 2018, but the technological progresses, developments, and the pace at which technology develops, I think very soon we will have the regime which will be desired to conduct experiments with a CO2 laser in the lab and observe these effects. So these observations show interesting possibilities. There is a novel mechanism of laser energy. I won't repeat. There are certain things which I have listed out here, and I'd like to acknowledge it was Professor Kao who had, when talked about we had a discussion. The problem basically started with him when he was alive, and he mentioned that the technological progress in CO2 laser and the fact that the high magnetic fields are observed in the lab this will be the novel regime to carry out studies, and that was one of the motivating things for me to take it further, and that is how I motivated my students to work on this problem, and I acknowledge my students who carried out these simulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
I mean, that's what I have a feeling about it. I cannot confirm it at the moment, but I think this is what may happen. No, so the concept has to be entirely different. But, I mean, like in ICS, nobody talks about external magnetic field. In MCS, nobody talks about this high density. But these both are very important. So if we take the best of the two, and with an innovative design, we can think of coming out with a novel concepts of fusion as well. And this is what I had mentioned in the 2018 DPPA meeting, and they were very, they appreciated this comment of mine in that meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for all speakers and audience. So now let's have a lunch. Let's close.
In fact, if you have a lot of iterations it got published, but that is not the main point. The main point is that this was in June 2018, and our paper got published sometimes in 2019. In between, and after hearing this, we had immediately submitted to PPCA. That also took months. But if you notice, there was another paper which was submitted in New Journal of Physics on 15th of November 2018. And if you look at the abstract, it also talked about the same effect for the interaction of ultra-intense sub-picosecond laser pulses with the near-relativistic critical density plasma. The longitudinal transport of the laser-generated fast electrons are significantly inhibited by the kilotesla level transverse magnetic field. This paper got immediately accepted. So I don't know how NJP. NJP, both the papers. You can see the authors. These are the authors. Looks like, and I have always, I don't know. Anyway, and you can see the acceptance. 28th March 2019 it got accepted from NJP with the same constraint of magnetic field, and my paper was rejected right from the editorial code. It went to PPCA. PPCA was submitted in June, and our paper got accepted when? Let's see. It was received 5th June and it got accepted only on 27th March. This was on 28th March they got accepted there, and ours was published in 8th May 2019. They published in April. So I don't know, I request some of you are experts that what is it that I have to improve upon, that even though my papers are said to be very, interesting and all, but I tend to face a lot of hurdles, and if some of the experts can tell me, I'll be very helpful.
I am very excited.
The person publishing in my journal is very the same.
So, no, through PSSI can start.
PSSI is another, I would say, it is another bureaucrat.